Welcome to the Artificial Fluency Podcast, where we delve into fascinating concepts while elevating your English proficiency. I'm Emma, and today we're exploring the psychological labyrinth known as the paradox of choice. In a world saturated with options, could the abundance of choices actually be undermining our happiness? Let's unravel this contemporary conundrum together. Have you ever stood paralyzed in the supermarket aisle, confronted by 47 varieties of breakfast cereal? Or perhaps you've spent an inordinate amount of time scrolling through streaming platforms, unable to commit to a film despite hundreds of options at your fingertips. If so, you've experienced what psychologist Barry Schwartz famously termed the paradox of choice. The counterintuitive notion that an abundance of options often leads not to liberation and satisfaction, but rather to decision paralysis and diminished contentment. This phenomenon permeates virtually every aspect of modern existence, from the trivial to the profound, from selecting a smartphone among countless models to navigating the labyrinthine landscape of career paths in our increasingly fluid professional ecosystem. Today we'll dissect this paradox, examining its psychological underpinnings, its manifestations in contemporary society, and potential strategies for mitigating its insidious effects. Let's begin by exploring some sophisticated vocabulary related to choice and decision-making. These terms will not only enrich your linguistic repertoire but also provide conceptual frameworks for understanding the nuances of this paradox. Cognitive overhead refers to the mental effort required to process information and make decisions. Each additional option increases this overhead, potentially leading to mental fatigue. Opportunity cost describes what you sacrifice when making a choice, essentially, the value of the roads not taken. Counterfactual thinking involves imagining alternative scenarios that might have unfolded had you made different choices, the mental gymnastics of what if. Analysis paralysis occurs when overthinking a decision leads to decision-making impairment or complete decisional standstill. Maximizing versus satisficing represents two decisional strategies exhaustively seeking the absolute best option versus settling for the first acceptable option encountered. Now let's delve into the psychological mechanisms underlying this paradox. Barry Schwartz's groundbreaking research illuminates several factors that transform abundant choice from blessing to burden. First, there's the tyranny of elevated expectations. When options proliferate, we anticipate greater satisfaction from our eventual selection. After all, with so many possibilities, surely one must be perfect. This expectation, however reasonable it may seem, invariably sets the stage for disappointment. Second, we encounter the phenomena of regret amplification. More options create more opportunities for counterfactual thinking, the mental simulation of roads not taken. The specter of these unlived alternatives haunts us, fostering the suspicion that a superior choice lurked somewhere in the discarded options. Third, there's the escalation of responsibility. When options were scarce, suboptimal outcomes could be attributed to limited choices. Now, with virtually unlimited options, the burden of a disappointing result falls squarely on our shoulders. We should have chosen better. Finally, we face the cumulative cognitive tax of decision-making. Each choice depletes our finite reserve of mental energy, a phenomenon psychologists call decision fatigue. By day's end, our cognitive resources have been so thoroughly depleted that we become susceptible to impulsive decisions or decision avoidance altogether. This paradox manifests in particularly fascinating ways in our digital ecosystem. Consider the modern phenomenon of content paralysis, that peculiar state where, despite having immediate access to virtually all of humanity's creative output, we find ourselves unable to select a film, book, or album. A 2019 study found that the average American spends approximately 23 minutes daily deciding what to watch on streaming platforms. That's nearly 6 days, annually spent not on consumption but merely on selection. The cognitive overhead of navigating these vast digital libraries essentially creates a new form of scarcity, not of content, but of the attention and decisional energy required to access it. Social media platforms similarly exploit the paradox of choice through infinite scrolling mechanisms. The endless procession of potentially interesting content triggers what psychologists call the variable reward pattern, the same mechanism that powers gambling addiction. Each scroll promises the possibility of something marginally more engaging than what came before, creating a perpetual state of mild dissatisfaction with the current content, while tantalizing us with the prospect of something better just a scroll away. Let's examine a particularly illuminating experiment conducted at Columbia University that crystallizes this paradox. Researchers set up 2 displays of gourmet jam in a high-end supermarket. One display featured 6 varieties, while the other offered 24. The larger display attracted more initial attention. Shoppers were drawn to the abundance of options. However, a remarkable pattern emerged at the point of purchase. 30% of customers who encountered the smaller display ultimately purchased jam, compared to a mere 3% of those who faced the 24 options. This tenfold difference in conversion rates vividly illustrates how excessive choice can impede rather than facilitate action. The cognitive overhead of comparing 24 varieties, weighing their relative merits, anticipating potential regret, and shouldering the responsibility of selection, created such friction that most shoppers opted to make no choice at all. The paradox extends beyond consumer behavior into the realm of life satisfaction and psychological well-being. Research has consistently demonstrated a correlation between maximizing tendencies, the compulsion to exhaustively evaluate all options in pursuit of the optimal choice, and diminished happiness. Maximizers, despite often achieving objectively better outcomes, typically report less satisfaction with their decisions than satisficers, who accept the first adequate option they encounter. The maximizer's pursuit of the ideal option comes at a significant psychological cost, heightened anxiety during the decision process, lingering doubt afterward, and increased vulnerability to regret. This phenomenon has profound implications for contemporary life satisfaction. As societal affluence increases, so too does the proliferation of choices across virtually all domains. Yet paradoxically, this expansion of freedom and opportunity may contribute to the epidemic of anxiety and dissatisfaction that characterizes much of modern existence. Now let's pivot to strategies for navigating this paradoxical landscape. How might we maintain the benefits of choice while mitigating its psychological costs? First, consider adopting what psychologists call satisficing thresholds, predetermined criteria that, when met, signal that an option is good enough to warrant selection without further search. This pre-commitment to reasonable standards helps circumvent the maximizer's trap of endless comparison. Second, practice intentional limitation. Curate your own choice environment by deliberately constraining certain decision domains. Consider capsule wardrobes, meal planning, or scheduled media consumption, all strategies that reduce daily decisional burden. Third, implement the 10th of October 10 rule for significant decisions. How will you feel about this choice 10 minutes from now? 10 months from now? 10 years from now? This temporal framework helps calibrate the appropriate investment of decisional resources relative to a choice's long-term significance. Finally, consider decision outsourcing where appropriate. Subscription services, trusted recommenders, or even algorithmic suggestions can effectively reduce choice overhead in non-critical domains, preserving cognitive resources for more consequential decisions. As we approach the conclusion of today's exploration, let's reflect on the broader philosophical implications of the paradox of choice. There's a profound irony in the fact that the expansion of freedom, surely one of humanity's noblest aspirations, can inadvertently undermine the very well-being it aims to enhance. This paradox invites us to reconsider our cultural equation of maximum choice with maximum welfare. Perhaps true freedom lies not in unlimited options but in the cultivation of discernment, the wisdom to know which choices merit our attention and which are better simplified or delegated. In his seminal work on this topic, Barry Schwartz offers this poignant observation: the expansion of freedom can actually mean the contraction of happiness. This counterintuitive insight challenges us to develop a more nuanced relationship with choice, to embrace abundance where it enriches our lives, while establishing protective boundaries where it threatens to overwhelm. Have you ever found it hard to follow native speakers during conversations or on TV shows? Do you sometimes feel lost when they speak quickly or use slang? What kind of situations do you want to understand better? Think about your answers as we go through today's episode. Now, let me share a story about my friend Mark. Mark moved to the United States last year. At first, he struggled a lot because native speakers spoke very fast. One day, he went to a coffee shop and the barista asked him, "Would you like a small or tall coffee?" Mark was confused because in his country, coffee sizes are different. He hesitated but chose small. Later, Mark learned that tall means small in that coffee shop. This story shows how important it is to understand different expressions and cultural meanings when you listen. Another example is from my husband, Daniel. Daniel works in a busy office where people use a lot of informal language. One afternoon, a colleague said, "Let's touch base later." At first, Daniel thought they were talking about sports, but then he understood it means, "Let's talk later." Knowing these small phrases makes a big difference in understanding conversations. So how can you improve? First, listen to short stories or conversations like these every day. Try to write down new words or phrases you hear. Then, practice using them in your own sentences. Also, pay attention to how native speakers link words together, like gonna instead of going to, or wanna instead of want to. These are common in real conversations. Here is a quick practice for you. Listen carefully. I'm gonna meet my wife at the station. What does gonna mean here? It means going to. Using this kind of natural speech will help you understand native speakers faster. Next, imagine you are at a party and someone says, "That's cool." What do they mean? They are saying something is good or nice. These little expressions are everywhere, and knowing them helps you feel more confident. Let me tell you about another experience from my friend Sarah. She once missed an important meeting because she didn't understand when someone said, "The meeting is pushed back to 3 p.m. She thought the meeting was canceled. Push back actually means the meeting was delayed, not canceled. This shows why learning phrases is important for understanding native speakers. One way to get better is to watch English videos or listen to podcasts with subtitles. This helps you connect spoken and written English. Write down phrases and try to use them in your daily conversations or writing. That way, your brain remembers better. Do you want to try a small challenge? Listen to a short English story or conversation every day. Write 5 new phrases or words. Then explain their meaning in your own words. Share your sentences with a friend or teacher. This simple exercise will improve your listening and writing skills together. Remember, understanding native English speakers takes time and practice. Be patient with yourself. Use stories, examples, and real conversations to learn naturally. Keep listening and writing every day. Now, let's listen to a short conversation between 2 colleagues, Emma and John. Emma says, "John, could you give me a hand with this report?" What does "give me a hand" mean? It means help me. John replies, "Sure, no problem." Using phrases like this makes English sound natural and friendly. In real life, native speakers use many expressions like this. The more you hear, the easier it will be to understand them. Try to guess the meaning from context first. Then check in a dictionary if you are not sure. Before we continue, think about this. What English phrases have you recently learned? How do you practice listening every day? Feel free to write your answers in the comments. In this episode, we will keep sharing useful stories and examples to help you listen like a native speaker. Keep your notebook ready, and don't forget to press the like button if you are enjoying this practice. Let's move forward with another story from my friend David. David was invited to dinner by his new neighbors. During the dinner, someone said, "Help yourself to the salad." David wasn't sure if he should ask for permission. Later, he understood that help yourself means take what you want. Knowing this expression helped him feel more comfortable at the party. If you listen carefully and practice these phrases, You will start understanding native speakers more clearly. Writing down what you hear improves your memory and helps with speaking too. Here's another phrase to remember. Catch up later. It means to talk again soon. For example, I have to go now, but let's catch up later. Try to use this phrase next time you talk with friends. Now, I want you to listen to a short story about Lisa and her husband Tom. Tom enjoys hiking. One weekend, Tom said, "I'm planning to hit the trail early tomorrow." Lisa asked, "What does hit the trail mean?" Tom explained, "It means to start hiking." This shows how native speakers use many idioms and phrases. Learning them helps you understand better. Try to learn idioms and common phrases little by little. Use them in your daily conversations or writing. This will improve your English faster than just studying grammar. Are you ready to practice more? Keep listening, keep writing, and soon you will notice your skills growing stronger. Now let's listen to a conversation between a teacher, Mr. Clark, and his student, Mia. Mr. Clark says, "Mia, don't forget to hand in your assignment by Friday." What does hand in mean? It means submit or give to the teacher. Mia replies, "I will, thank you." By learning these everyday expressions, you will understand native English speakers in classrooms, offices, and social places. Before we continue, take a moment to think. What is the hardest part of listening for you? Is it speed, vocabulary, or pronunciation? Identifying this will help you focus your practice better. Next, I will share a story about my cousin Alex. Alex works in a restaurant. One busy evening, a customer said, "I'm starving." Alex didn't know what it meant. Later, he learned it means very hungry. Now Alex understands better when customers use informal expressions. Learning these words and phrases helps you feel more confident and relaxed when speaking or listening. Do you want to try a small exercise now? Listen to short dialogues on TV or podcasts. Write down 2 new phrases every day. Look up their meanings and try to use them in your own sentences. This simple habit will improve your listening, vocabulary, and writing all at once. Let's listen to one more quick conversation. Between friends, Olivia and Mark. Olivia says, "Mark, can you pick me up at 6? Mark replies, "Sure, I'll be there." Pick me up means come and get me. Knowing these common expressions makes everyday English easier to understand. Keep practicing with real stories and conversations. This is the best way to learn. Let's continue with another story about my friend James. James recently started a new job at a busy office. One day his boss said, "James, can you cover for me during the meeting?" At first, James was not sure what cover for me meant. Later, he understood it means to do someone's work while they are away. This is a very useful phrase to know, because native speakers use it often at work. When you hear new phrases like this, try to repeat them aloud. It helps your brain remember and understand faster. Writing them down also makes a big difference. Here is a short practice for you. Imagine your colleague asks, "Can you give me a hand with this project?" What does it mean? It means, "Can you help me?" Try to say it in your own words. Now I will share a story about my wife, Anna. Anna went to a doctor's appointment last week. The doctor said, "You need to take it easy for a few days." Anna wasn't sure if she should stop all activities or just relax a little. The phrase, "take it easy," means to rest and not do too much. Understanding phrases like this helps in many real-life situations. When native speakers talk, they often use expressions that are not in textbooks. This is why listening to real stories is so important. It helps you learn the English people use every day. Let's try another phrase. Hold on a second. If someone says this, it means Wait for a moment. For example, if you are talking to someone on the phone and they say, "Hold on," you should wait quietly for a moment. This is very common in conversations. Now, listen to a story about my friend, Rachel. Rachel was shopping in a store and the cashier said, "Would you like a bag?" Rachel said, "No, thank you." Later, Rachel learned that bag means a plastic or paper bag to carry her things. Simple words like this are important to know so you understand daily conversations. Try to listen carefully to common words and phrases in everyday life. Here's another quick example. If someone says, "I'm running late," it means they will arrive later than planned. For example, if your husband is late for dinner, he might say, "Sorry, I'm running late." Try to notice these small phrases when you talk or listen. They make a big difference. Let's hear a story about my friend Kevin. Kevin was at a park and someone asked him, "Do you want to join us for a walk?" Kevin was happy and said, "Yes, I'd love to." The phrase "join us" means come with us. This is a friendly way to invite someone. When you hear invitations or polite offers, try to learn how native speakers say them. It will help you feel more confident in your own conversations. Here is a phrase to remember. No worries. It means, it's okay or don't worry about it. For example, if you say sorry, the other person might say, "No worries, keep practicing." These expressions every day. Write them down and try to use them. Now think about this question. What are some common phrases you hear in English that you don't fully understand? Write them down and try to find their meaning. The best way to improve is to listen often and practice speaking and writing with these phrases. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Lisa. Lisa needed help fixing her computer. She called her husband and said, "Can you take a look at my computer?" Her husband replied, "Sure, I'll check it now." The phrase "take a look" means look carefully. This is a common way to ask for help. When native speakers talk, they use many short phrases like this. Learning them makes listening easier. Here's a practice sentence. If someone says, "Let's grab lunch," it means, "Let's eat lunch together." Try to use this phrase when you invite someone. Keep listening and writing every day. Soon, you will understand more and more. Now I want to share a story about my cousin Ben. Ben's boss told him, "Please follow up with the client tomorrow." Ben asked, "What does follow up mean?" The boss explained, "It means to check or contact someone again." This phrase is very common in business and daily life. Try to learn small phrases like follow up, give a hand, or catch up. They help you understand native speakers better. Are you ready to try a small listening practice now? Listen to a conversation and write down 3 new phrases. Then, check their meanings and try to use them in sentences. This simple habit will improve your English step by step. Let's listen to a short dialogue between 2 friends, Emma and Jake. Emma says, "Jake, can you pick up some groceries?" Jake replies, "Yes, I will." The phrase pick up means to buy or collect something. Knowing these phrases helps you in daily life. Keep practicing with real conversations and stories. This is the best way to learn English naturally. Let's continue with more helpful stories and real-life phrases that native English speakers often use. These will make your listening and writing skills much better. So stay focused, listen carefully, and think about how you can use these expressions in your daily life. Now, let's talk about my friend Daniel. Daniel works at a local office. One day his coworker Sarah asked him, "Daniel, can you fill in for me tomorrow?" At first, Daniel didn't understand. He thought maybe she was talking about a form or a document. But later, he realized that fill in for me means to do someone's job when they are not there. This is a very common phrase, especially at work. If someone is sick or has an appointment, they might ask a coworker to fill in for them. Daniel agreed to help, and the next day, he went to Sarah's desk and completed her tasks. After that, Daniel told me, "Now I understand what that phrase means. It's actually very useful." When you hear native speakers say phrases like this, it can be confusing. That's why listening to real stories helps you learn them more easily. If you don't understand something, it's okay. You can ask or look it up later, but try to remember the situation, the tone, and the meaning behind the words. Let's move on to another common phrase that native speakers use. I'll get back to you. I remember a moment when my wife, Anna, applied for a new job. After her interview, she asked the manager, "When will I hear from you?" The manager smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll get back to you by Friday." Anna was not sure what it meant. Later, I explained to her that "I'll get back to you" means I will contact you again later. It's something you often hear in business or in polite conversation. For example, if someone asks you a question and you don't have the answer right now, you can say, "Let me check and I'll get back to you." These phrases are not always easy to guess from the words alone. That's why we use this podcast, to help you understand them through real stories and easy examples. Now here's another story about my friend Claire. Claire runs a small bakery. One day a customer came in late in the afternoon and said, "I'm looking for something quick to grab and go." Claire wasn't sure what grab and go meant, so she asked politely, "Would you like something easy to carry?" The customer smiled and pointed to a sandwich. "Yes, that's perfect." After the customer left, Claire looked up the phrase. Grab and go means food that is ready to take with you. No need to sit down and eat. It's a phrase you might hear in shops, restaurants, or even when someone is in a hurry. So if you're ever in a situation where someone says, "Grab and go," now you'll know exactly what they mean. You can also use this phrase when you're busy and don't have time to sit and eat. Say something like, "I just want something quick to grab and go." Let's keep going. This time, I want to share something that happened to my neighbor David. David is a very friendly man who likes to help others. One day, his neighbor Emma knocked on the door and said, "Hey David, I'm in a bit of a rush. Can you keep an eye on my kids for 5 minutes while I run to the store?" David smiled and agreed. But after Emma left, he started thinking, what does "keep an eye on" mean exactly? He knew it meant something like watching, but he wasn't sure. Later, he learned that "keep an eye on" means to watch something or someone for a short time. It's often used in casual speech. For example, if you are cooking something, you might say to your husband or wife, "Can you keep an eye on the soup while I answer the phone?" Or if you have children, you might say, "Please keep an eye on them while they play outside." These small phrases make your English sound more natural. Native speakers use them without thinking, but learners need practice to understand and use them correctly. Now let's talk about a conversation between two friends, Michael and Tom. Michael was going to meet Tom at the train station, but Tom was late. Michael called him and asked, "Where are you?" Tom said, "Sorry, I got held up in traffic." Michael was confused. Held up? Did something bad happen? Did someone stop him? Afterward, Tom explained, held up can mean delayed, especially by something unexpected like traffic, work, or an emergency. It's another phrase that can sound strange at first, but once you hear it in real situations, you start to remember what it means. So next time someone says they got held up, it usually just means they were delayed. You can also use it yourself. For example, "Sorry I'm late. I got held up at work." Let me share one more helpful story. This one is about my cousin Emily. She works at a clothing shop. A customer once said to her, "This shirt is not really my cup of tea." Emily smiled, but she was confused. She told me later, "What does tea have to do with shirts?" I laughed and explained, "Not my cup of tea means I don't like it, or it's not my style. It's a polite way to say you're not interested in something." Even though it sounds strange, this phrase is very common. For example, if someone invites you to an activity you don't enjoy, you can say, "Thanks, but it's not really my cup of tea." It's polite and easy to say, and native speakers understand it well. So keep listening, and don't forget to write down any new expressions you hear. Try to use them when you speak or write. That's how you will really start to understand native English speakers. If you're enjoying this podcast so far, press the like button and make sure to follow for more English listening practice. Every day here on the English Pod community, we bring you real-life stories. Let's keep going, and thank you for staying with me. You're doing great, and your listening skills will improve more and more if you stay focused. In today's episode from the English Pod community, we are helping you understand how native English speakers talk in daily life, using real stories, useful phrases, and natural conversations. So now, let me tell you more stories with easy examples and clear explanations to help you understand better. I want to tell you about James, who works at a construction company. He had a new worker named Kevin join his team. On the first day, Kevin seemed a little nervous. James wanted to help him feel more relaxed, so he said, "No worries, Kevin. I'll show you the ropes." Kevin looked surprised and said, "What ropes?" He thought maybe James was talking about real ropes for climbing or lifting things. But actually, show you the ropes means teaching someone how to do a job or task. It means giving them instructions or helping them learn how things are done. James laughed a little and explained, "I just mean I'll show you how everything works around here." Kevin smiled and said, "Okay, thanks. I was really confused." Now Kevin uses that phrase all the time with new workers. When he helps others, he says, "Let me show you the ropes." So when you hear someone say "show the ropes," it simply means helping someone understand how to do something new. Let's talk about another day in Kevin's life. A week later, one of his co-workers named Brian came to work looking tired. Kevin asked, "Hey Brian, everything okay?" Brian yawned and said, "I burned the candle at both ends last night." Kevin raised his eyebrows. "You burned a candle?" he asked. Brian laughed and said, "No, it just means I stayed up really late and got up early today." Kevin laughed too and said, "You should get some rest tonight." This is another phrase that native speakers use often, burning the candle at both ends. It means working very hard and sleeping very little. You might be working late and waking up early, and that can make you feel tired. People use this phrase when they are very busy or trying to do too much in one day. Let me share something from my own experience now. A few years ago, I had a neighbor named Rachel. She was always friendly and polite. One morning, she knocked on my door and said, "Sorry to bother you, but I need a quick favor." I said, "Of course, what do you need?" She said, "Can I borrow your car for half an hour? Mine won't start." I told her, "No problem." After she left, I remembered something she had said earlier in the week. She said, "I always try to return the favor." At the time, I didn't think about it much, but that day I realized how helpful she was. Return the favor means doing something kind for someone because they helped you before. So if someone helps you, and later you help them back, that's called returning the favor. It's a good expression to know when you talk about helping friends, neighbors, or coworkers. Now let me tell you about a conversation between Mark and his wife Lisa. They were at the store buying some groceries. Mark looked at the list and said, "Let's stick to the list today." Lisa smiled and said, I know, but I just want to check the snack section. Mark laughed and said, You always say that? Stick to the list is a phrase people use when they want to stay focused and not get distracted. In this case, it means buying only the things on their shopping list. You can also use this phrase in many situations, like when studying. For example, if you're reviewing vocabulary, you might say, Let me stick to this page for now. It's a way to stay focused and not move away from your goal. Native speakers use it all the time when they want to remind themselves or others to stay on track. Another good story comes from a man named Andrew. Andrew works as a plumber and he's always busy. One morning his phone rang. It was a client named Peter. Peter said, Hi Andrew, I hate to bother you, but something's come up. Can we reschedule? Andrew said, No problem, I understand. Things happen. When Peter said, Something's come up, he meant that something unexpected had happened, and he couldn't make the appointment. This phrase is common in daily English. When you hear someone say, Something's come up, it usually means they had a change of plans because of an emergency or surprise. You can use it too. For example, if you can't go to a meeting or visit someone, you can say, I'm sorry, something came up. Let me share a time when I heard that phrase. I had a meeting with my cousin Thomas. We planned to meet at a cafe at 3 p.m. But at 2:30 Thomas called and said, Natasha, I'm really sorry, something's come up. Can we meet tomorrow instead? He sounded stressed, so I knew it was serious. I said, Of course, no problem. At all. That's how native speakers use that phrase in a real-life way. Now, let's go to another common phrase. Play it by ear. I remember hearing this when I was visiting my aunt's house. My cousin Emily wanted to go to the park, but it looked like it might rain. She asked her husband, Should we still go? He replied, Let's play it by ear. Emily was confused. What does music have to do with this? She asked. He laughed and said, No, it just means let's decide later, depending on the situation. That's what play it by ear means. You wait and see what happens before making a decision. Native speakers use this when they don't want to plan everything right away. So if someone asks, What time will you leave? And you're not sure, you can say, I'll play it by ear. Another helpful phrase is call it a day. This story is about a man named Paul. Paul is a carpenter who builds furniture. One evening he was working on a table when his wife, Claire, came in and said, You've been working all day, maybe it's time to call it a day. Paul looked at the clock and realized it was already 7 p.m. He smiled and said, You're right. Let's have dinner. Call it a day means to stop working because you've done enough for now. You can use this at work, during study, or even when cleaning your home. For example, after studying English for a few hours, you might say, I've learned a lot today. I think I'll call it a day. Here's another good one. Out of the blue. This happened to my friend John. John was reading a book when he got a phone call from an old friend he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. He answered and said, Wow, this is so out of the blue. The friend laughed and said, I know, I just thought of you and wanted to say hi. Out of the blue means something that happens suddenly and without warning. It's a surprise. You can use this phrase when something unexpected happens. For example, she showed up at my door out of the blue. Or, he asked me a question, out of the blue. All of these stories and examples come from daily life, and native English speakers use these phrases naturally. As you listen to them in this podcast, your brain will start to remember them. Try to say them out loud after me. Even writing them down can help you remember better. The more you listen to real English, the more natural it becomes. Thank you for listening, and I'm so glad you're here. This is Natasha, and you're listening to the English Pod Community. I know you're serious about improving your English, and in this episode, we are working hard to help you understand how native English speakers talk in real life. These stories and examples are not from books. They are real conversations that happen every day, and they help you build listening and writing skills at the same time. Now, let's talk about a very common situation. Imagine you're at work, and someone says, "Let's get the ball rolling." What do you think that means? Are they going to play a game? Are they talking about a ball? Not really. Let me tell you a story. Susan works in an office. One day, she had a meeting with her coworkers. They were planning a small event for the company. Everyone was sitting quietly, not sure how to start. Susan looked around and said, "Okay, let's get the ball rolling. We need to make a list of what we need for the event." When she said that, people smiled, and the conversation started. Let's get the ball rolling means let's begin something. It's a way to say, let's start now. You can use this at work, at home, or with friends. For example, if you want to start cleaning your room, you can say, "Let me get the ball rolling and start with my desk." It's a friendly and active phrase. Now here's another phrase you'll often hear. Break the ice. It has nothing to do with cold weather or frozen lakes. It means to make people feel comfortable when they first meet. Let me give you an example. One day, Daniel started a new job. He was quiet, sitting alone in the break room. His coworker Sarah noticed this and walked over. She smiled and said, "Hey, I'm Sarah. I work in the sales team. Want some coffee?" Daniel smiled back, and they started chatting. Later, Daniel said, "Thanks, Sarah. You really helped break the ice." So when someone says, "break the ice," it means doing something to help people relax or start a conversation, especially when they don't know each other well. You can break the ice by asking a simple question, offering help, or giving a kind smile. It's a great phrase for school, work, or social gatherings. Now let's move to another helpful expression, under the weather. No, it doesn't mean you are standing in the rain. It actually means someone is feeling sick or not well. Let me tell you about George. He usually wakes up early and goes for a walk. But one morning, he stayed in bed. His wife Emily asked, "Are you okay?" George replied, "I feel a little under the weather today. Maybe I caught a cold." Emily nodded and said, "Take it easy today. I'll bring you some tea." So when someone says they are under the weather, it means they don't feel well. Maybe they have a headache or a sore throat. Native English speakers use this phrase often, especially when talking to friends, family, or coworkers. Now, here's another story. It's about Laura and her husband Michael. Laura wanted to buy a new washing machine, but she wasn't sure if it was the right time. Michael said, "Let's sleep on it." Laura looked confused. "Sleep on what?" she asked. Michael smiled and said, "No, it means let's think about it overnight. We don't have to decide right now." Laura nodded and said, "That sounds like a good idea." So the phrase, "sleep on it," means you wait until the next day to make a decision. It gives you time to think. This is a common phrase used in business, at home, or anytime someone needs to decide something important. Another great phrase is pulling someone's leg. Let me give you a simple story. Ben and his friend Charles were working together on a home project. Charles said, "Ben, I just saw a snake in your toolbox." Ben jumped up, shocked. Then Charles laughed and said, "Just kidding. I'm pulling your leg." Ben laughed too and said, "You got me." So pulling someone's leg means you are joking with them. You're not serious. It's a fun way to say you're teasing or trying to be funny. Native speakers use this in light situations, But remember, always smile or laugh after so the other person knows you're joking. Now let's move to another phrase. The ball is in your court. This one sounds like it comes from sports, and it does. But we use it in conversation too. Imagine this. Rachel and Thomas are planning a family trip. Rachel says, "I found 3 good places we can go. I've emailed them to you." Thomas replies, "Okay, I'll take a look. Now the ball is in my court." That means it's his turn to do something. When you say the ball is in your court, it means someone else has to make a decision or take the next step. You can use this at work too. If you send an email and you're waiting for a reply, you can say, "Now the ball is in their court." Here's another helpful phrase. In hot water. It doesn't mean you're in the bathtub. It means you're in trouble. Let me give you an example. David forgot to send an important report to his boss. When the boss asked for it, David had nothing ready. Later, he told his coworker, "I'm in hot water now. I should have finished that report yesterday." So, in hot water means you've done something wrong or you're in a difficult situation. It's a good phrase to use when you want to describe a problem or mistake. Here's one more phrase that native speakers love to use. Hit the nail on the head. Let me tell you a quick story. Samantha and her husband William were talking about their budget. They were wondering why they didn't have much money left at the end of the month. Samantha looked at the bills and said, "I think it's because we've been eating out too much." William nodded and said, "You hit the nail on the head." That means she said exactly the right thing. Hit the nail on the head means to be completely correct or say something exactly right. You can use this in class, at work, or in everyday conversation. Now let's talk about one more phrase for today. Cut to the chase. This is used when someone wants to stop all the small talk and go directly to the main point. Imagine Brian is talking with his team at work. People are discussing many small topics, and time is running out. Brian says, "Let's cut to the chase. What's the main problem here?" That means, let's focus. What really matters? This phrase helps keep things clear and simple. You can use it when you're in a meeting, or even when talking with friends if you want to focus on the important part. As you can see, all of these phrases come from real conversations. Native English speakers use them without thinking, so the more you hear them, the more natural they become for you. Listening to these examples helps you understand real English, and using them helps you speak with more confidence. Thank you for staying with me. I hope you are repeating some of these phrases in your mind or out loud. This is how real learning happens. Step by step, story by story, word by word. And if you're learning something new, please press the like button. It helps us grow and helps more learners like you find this channel. The English Pod community uploads English listening practice every day, so don't forget to follow. Now, let's continue with even more natural phrases and useful real-life conversations. Let's keep going. I want to take you even deeper into the real world of English conversation. In this part of the episode, we'll explore more ways that native speakers use everyday phrases. These expressions may seem confusing at first, but when you hear them in real-life situations and stories, you'll start to understand them more easily. You'll also learn how to use them when speaking or writing. Remember, the more you listen, the better you get at recognizing these patterns and phrases. Let's begin with this phrase, keep an eye on something. It sounds like you're watching something very carefully, right? And that's exactly what it means. Let me share a story. Helen and her husband Robert were getting ready for a family dinner. Helen was cooking in the kitchen. The food was almost done, but she needed to answer a phone call. She turned to Robert and said, "Can you keep an eye on the oven while I take this call?" Robert nodded and stood near the oven. So, keep an eye on something means to watch something carefully. It could be food in the kitchen, children playing outside, or even someone's bag at the airport. It's a simple and helpful phrase you'll hear a lot. Here's another common expression. On the same page. Now, you might think this is about a book, but in conversation, it has a different meaning. It means that two or more people agree or understand each other. Let me give you an example. Jason and his coworker Linda were planning a project. Jason wanted to do the project in a simple way, while Linda wanted to make it more complex. They were going back and forth with ideas. Finally, Jason said, "Let's make sure we're on the same page. We need to follow the company's guidelines." Linda agreed, and they started working together more smoothly. So when you say, "we're on the same page," it means you and the other person share the same understanding. This is very useful in meetings, discussions, and even in family planning. Now here's a very natural phrase. Hit the ground running. It doesn't mean someone is falling down. It means to start something quickly and with full energy. Let me tell you about Peter. He got a new job in a travel company. On his first day, he arrived early, talked with his manager, and started answering emails and helping customers without waiting. His manager smiled and said, "Peter really hit the ground running." So when you hear this phrase, you'll know it means someone is starting strong without delay. It's often used in work settings or when talking about projects or new plans. Let's move on to another useful expression. In the long run. This means thinking about the future, not just today. Anna and her husband Eric were talking about buying a water filter. Eric said, "It's a bit expensive." But Anna replied, "Yes, but in the long run, we will save money by not buying bottled water." Eric thought about it and agreed. So when someone says, "in the long run," they're thinking about the big picture, what happens over time. It's a helpful phrase when you want to show the benefits of something in the future. Next is a very common phrase you will hear often. It's not a big deal. This means something is not serious or not a problem. Let me share this story. Thomas accidentally dropped a small spoon while helping his wife Rachel in the kitchen. He said, "I'm sorry." But Rachel smiled and said, "It's not a big deal. It's just a spoon." This helped Thomas feel better. When you use "it's not a big deal," you're telling someone not to worry. It's a kind and relaxed way to say everything is okay. Now let's talk about a different expression. Think outside the box. This means to think in a new or creative way, not the usual way. John was working on a problem at work. He needed a new idea to help customers. His manager said, "Try to think outside the box." John then came up with a plan that no one else had thought of. It worked, and everyone was happy. So if you want to show someone that you are thinking creatively, use this phrase. It's great for school, work, and even daily life when solving problems. Another good one is a piece of cake. It's not about food this time. It means something is very easy. Let me give you a simple story. Sarah needed to send an email. Her husband Mark asked, "Was it hard to write?" Sarah replied, "No, it was a piece of cake." That means it was very easy for her. So when something feels simple or doesn't take much effort, you can say it's a piece of cake. Let's now talk about a phrase people use when they want to stay calm. Take it easy. This means to relax or not get upset. Let's say James had a busy week at work. On the weekend, his wife Olivia said, "You should take it easy today. Just rest and enjoy some quiet time." James smiled. You can use "take it easy" with friends or family when you want someone to rest or stay calm. It's a gentle and kind phrase. Another phrase that's very useful is costs an arm and a leg. This sounds scary, but don't worry. It just means something is very expensive. Emma and her husband Brian were looking at new fridges. One of them was very fancy and expensive. Brian looked at the price and said, "Wow, this fridge costs an arm and a leg." They both laughed and chose a cheaper one. So when you hear this phrase, it means the price is very high. You can use it when talking about shopping, services, or anything costly. Let's now explore get cold feet. This has nothing to do with the weather. It means someone becomes nervous or scared about doing something, often at the last minute. Here's a story. Richard and his wife Lisa planned to start a small family business. Everything was ready. But one night Richard said, "I'm not sure if this is a good idea." Lisa looked at him and said, "Are you getting cold feet?" Richard nodded and they talked more until he felt confident again. This phrase is often used before big changes like starting a job, moving, or beginning a new project. It's a way to say someone is unsure or afraid to move forward. Now one last one for this part. Go the extra mile. This means to do more than expected, to give extra effort. For example, Nancy was helping her neighbor with some gardening. Not only did she water the plants, but she also cleaned the garden tools and arranged the flowers beautifully. Her neighbor said, "You really went the extra mile. Thank you." This is a powerful phrase. When someone says you go the extra mile, it means you care and you work hard. It shows strong character and kindness. These expressions are part of natural English. Native speakers use them every day. And now, you can too. When you listen to real stories like these, you begin to feel more confident. You know what phrases mean, when to use them, and how to express yourself better in both speaking and writing. Let's continue. There are still more stories and phrases that will help you grow your skills step by step. Let's continue. This time, we're going to focus even more on how native English speakers talk in real life. Many learners feel nervous when they hear native speakers talk quickly or use phrases they haven't learned in school. But don't worry. The more you listen, the more your brain gets used to these patterns. You'll understand faster, and you'll be able to use them yourself when speaking or writing. Let's start with this useful expression. Pulling someone's leg. It sounds strange, but it actually means joking with someone in a friendly way. Here's a story. William and his wife Sophie were sitting in their kitchen. Sophie said, "I just saw a squirrel open the mailbox and take a letter." William looked shocked. Then Sophie laughed and said, "I'm just pulling your leg." William laughed too and said, "You really got me." So when someone says something funny or silly just to make you react, they might say, "I'm just pulling your leg," meaning it was a joke. This phrase is common in everyday conversations among friends or family. Now let's look at another phrase. Break the ice. It has nothing to do with real ice. It means to start a conversation, especially when people feel shy or don't know each other well. For example, Sarah started a new job. On her first day, she didn't know anyone. During lunch, her coworker Tom said, "Hi Sarah, do you like tea or coffee?" Sarah smiled and said, "Tea." That simple question helped her relax. Tom had broken the ice. So break the ice means to start talking in a friendly way, to help everyone feel more comfortable. It's great for meeting new people at work, in class, or in your neighborhood. Next, let's talk about under the weather. This means feeling sick, but usually not very serious. Let's say Daniel woke up feeling tired and had a sore throat. His wife Emma asked, "Are you okay?" Daniel said, "I think I'm a little under the weather today." Emma made him tea and told him to rest. So if you're feeling a bit sick or tired, you can say, "I'm under the weather." It's a soft way to say you don't feel your best. Here's another phrase. The ball is in your court. This comes from sports, but people use it in normal life. It means that it's your turn to make a decision or take action. For example, Olivia and her husband Ben were talking about buying a house. Olivia said, "We've seen all the options. The ball is in your court now, Ben." That meant she was waiting for him to decide. So when someone says the ball is in your court, it means now it's your time to choose or do something. Now let's move to bite the bullet. This means to do something difficult or unpleasant, even if you don't want to. Here's a story. Michael had a toothache for weeks but was afraid to visit the dentist. Finally, his wife Laura said, "You need to bite the bullet and go." Michael nodded and made an appointment. It wasn't easy, but he felt better afterward. So if there's something hard you need to do and you stop avoiding it, you're biting the bullet. Let's look at this next one. Call it a day. This means to stop working or to finish for now. For example, Rachel and Thomas were cleaning their house all morning. After a few hours, Thomas said, "I think we've done enough. Let's call it a day." Rachel agreed, and they sat down to rest. You can use call it a day when you're ready to stop what you're doing, work, studying, or any task. Now let's explore a blessing in disguise. This means something that looks bad at first but turns out to be good later. Here's a real-life story. Jane lost her job at a company she didn't like. At first, she was upset. But later, she found a better job that she truly enjoyed. She told her husband, losing that job was a blessing in disguise. So when something seems negative but brings a good result later, you can use this phrase. Another helpful expression is cut to the chase. It means to skip the extra details and go straight to the main point. Let's say David and his friend Andrew were discussing a problem. David was explaining all the small things, but Andrew said, "Can we cut to the chase? What's the real issue here?" David then explained the main problem clearly. You can use this when someone is talking too much or going off topic. It helps keep things clear and simple. Now let's look at get the hang of it. This means to learn how to do something after trying for a while. Emma was learning to ride a bicycle. At first she fell a few times, but after some practice she smiled and said to her husband James, "I think I'm getting the hang of it." So when you're learning something new and it starts to feel easier, that's when you get the hang of it. Let's talk about in hot water. This means being in trouble. For example, Mark forgot to pay the electricity bill. When his wife Anna found out, she said, "You're in hot water now." Mark quickly called the company and fixed the problem. So if someone makes a mistake and gets into trouble, you can say they're in hot water. Next is, let the cat out of the bag. It means to reveal a secret by mistake. Lucy was planning a surprise dinner for her husband Adam, but while talking to her friend, she accidentally told him about it. Adam heard and said, "So there's a surprise dinner? I guess you let the cat out of the bag." It's a fun way to talk about saying something you weren't supposed to share yet. Now let's look at back to square one. This means starting again from the beginning. Paul and his wife Emily were trying to fix a broken shelf. They thought they fixed it, but it broke again. Paul said, "Well, we're back to square one." They had to start over. This is useful when things don't work out and you need to begin again. Another one is speak of the devil. This is something people say when the person they're talking about appears at that moment. Let's say Lisa and her husband Brian were talking about their friend Sam. Suddenly, Sam walked into the room. Brian laughed and said, "Speak of the devil." It's not a bad thing. It's just a fun way to say, "We were just talking about you." Let's keep going with once in a blue moon. This means something that happens very rarely. Jessica and her husband David only go on long vacations every few years. One day, Jessica said, "We should go on a trip soon. We only do this once in a blue moon." So when something happens not often, you can use this phrase. Now let's go with hit the nail on the head. It means to say something exactly right. James and his wife Lily were trying to understand why their car wouldn't start. Lily said, "Maybe the battery is old." James checked and said, "You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the problem." This phrase is great when someone gives the perfect answer or finds the real reason. Let's try burning the midnight oil. It means staying up late to work or study. John was working on a report for his office. His wife Claire saw him at his desk at 1 a.m. and said, "You're burning the midnight oil again." This is often used when someone is working hard, especially late at night. Here's another one. Throw in the towel. It means to give up. For example, Ben was trying to fix the sink, but after 3 hours he looked at his wife Sarah and said, "I'm throwing in the towel. Let's call a plumber." You can use this when someone stops trying because it's too hard or not working. Let's continue even more in the next part with new phrases and more examples to help you understand native English speakers better every day. Let's continue. Now we'll go deeper into real-life expressions and stories to help you better understand how native English speakers talk in everyday conversations. Remember, the more you listen to these phrases used in natural ways, the easier it becomes to recognize them. And soon, you'll also be able to use them in your own speaking and writing. Let's keep going. Let's start with the expression, on the same page. This means two or more people agree on something or understand each other. Here's a real-life story. Andrew and his wife Helen were planning a family picnic. Andrew said, "Let's bring sandwiches and juice." Helen said, "I was thinking the same thing." Then Andrew smiled and said, "Good, we're on the same page." So when two people agree or have the same understanding, you can say they are on the same page. Next, let's talk about get cold feet. This phrase means feeling nervous or scared to do something, usually at the last minute. For example, Richard had a big presentation at work. He had prepared everything, but just before going up to speak, he told his coworker Emma, "I'm getting cold feet." Emma encouraged him and said, "You'll do great. Just breathe and take your time." Richard smiled and walked up to give his speech. In the end, he did really well. So if someone gets nervous before doing something important, they can say, "I'm getting cold feet." Let's look at another common phrase, in the same boat. This means that two or more people are in the same situation, especially a difficult one. Here's a story. Rebecca and James both lost their jobs during a company cut. They met for coffee and talked about their worries. James said, "I feel so uncertain." Rebecca replied, "You're not alone. We're in the same boat." That made both of them feel better, knowing they were not the only ones going through it. This phrase is helpful when you want to show support or remind someone that others are facing similar problems. Now let's move to cost an arm and a leg. This phrase means something is very expensive. For example, Peter and his wife Susan were looking at new furniture. Susan saw a beautiful sofa and said, "I love this one." Peter looked at the price tag and said, "It costs an arm and a leg." They both laughed and decided to look for a cheaper option. So when something is too expensive, you can say, "It costs an arm and a leg." Next up is take it with a grain of salt. This means to not believe something completely or to be careful when trusting what someone says. Let's say Olivia tells her friend Daniel, Tom said he ran 20 kilometers in 1 hour. Daniel smiles and says, I'll take that with a grain of salt. That means Daniel isn't sure if Tom is telling the full truth. So when someone tells you something that sounds too good or maybe not 100% true, you can say, take it with a grain of salt. Here's another one. Hit the books. This means to start studying seriously. For example, Claire was talking to her son, Ethan. She said, your exams are coming, it's time to hit the books. Ethan nodded and went to his room to study. This is a good way to say someone needs to focus on studying. Now let's learn about give someone a hand. This means to help someone. Here's a story. Emily was trying to carry 3 heavy bags of groceries. Her neighbor George saw her and said, let me give you a hand. He helped carry the bags to her door. Emily smiled and said, thank you, George. This phrase is used often when offering or asking for help. Next is, go the extra mile. It means to do more than what is expected. Let's say Sarah is a nurse. One day, a patient was feeling nervous. Sarah stayed with her longer, explained everything clearly, and made her feel calm. Her coworker Anna said, you always go the extra mile for your patients. That means Sarah puts in more effort than required. You can use this when someone does extra work to help or improve something. Let's now explore keep an eye on. This means to watch something or someone carefully. David and his wife Rachel were cooking. Rachel said, I need to go check the laundry. Can you keep an eye on the soup? David said, sure. So if you ask someone to watch something for a moment, you can say, keep an eye on it. Here's a new one. Run into someone. This means to meet someone by chance, without planning. Here's a real-life story. Michael went to the market and ran into his old friend Henry. They were both surprised and happy. Henry said, wow, I didn't expect to see you here. Michael laughed and said, I just ran into you. So when you meet someone unexpectedly, use run into. Let's look at cut corners. It means to do something quickly and not carefully, often to save time or money. For example, Thomas was building a wooden shelf. He didn't measure the pieces correctly because he wanted to finish fast. His wife Lisa looked at the shelf and said, it looks weak. Did you cut corners? Thomas said, yes, and now I'll have to do it again. So if someone does something the easy way and the result isn't good, we say they cut corners. Now let's go to face the music. This means to accept the result of something you've done, even if it's bad. Here's a story. Ben forgot to send an important email at work. His manager found out. Ben said, I made a mistake. I'll face the music. He explained what happened and promised to fix it. So when someone admits a mistake and deals with the results, they are facing the music. Next is, throw someone under the bus. This means to blame someone else to protect yourself. Let's say Hannah and Jake were working on a school project. When the teacher asked why it was late, Jake said, Hannah didn't finish her part. Hannah was shocked. Later, she told her brother, Jake threw me under the bus. So when someone blames another person unfairly, this phrase is used. Let's also talk about in over your head. It means to be in a situation that's too difficult. Paul got a new job managing a big team. After 1 week, he told his wife Laura, this is harder than I thought. I think I'm in over my head. Laura said, don't worry. You'll learn, step by step. This is useful when you feel something is too much to handle right now. Now let's explore by the book. This means doing everything strictly according to rules. For example, Olivia was driving with her husband John. She stopped at every sign and followed every rule. John smiled and said, you really drive by the book, Olivia said, better safe than sorry. This phrase is helpful when describing someone who follows rules exactly. Let's keep learning. Here's another phrase, out of the blue. This means something happens suddenly, without warning. One day, Sophie got a message from an old school friend she hadn't talked to in 10 years. She told her husband Matthew, "He texted me out of the blue." It was unexpected. So when something happens suddenly, you can say, "It came out of the blue." We'll continue in the next part with more useful phrases, examples, and simple stories to help you understand how native speakers talk and how you can become more Let's keep going. You're doing great by listening and learning through real stories and everyday phrases. As we continue, remember, each time you listen and understand how these phrases are used in real situations, your listening and writing will get stronger. These stories will help you connect words to meaning and help you feel more confident when speaking with native English speakers. Now let's explore more common phrases and expressions used by native speakers. Let's begin with this expression, break the ice. This means to start a conversation in a relaxed way, especially when people feel shy or uncomfortable. Here's a real-life example. Claire was starting a new job. On her first day, she didn't know anyone. During lunch, one of her co-workers, James, came over and said, "Hi, I'm James. Where did you work before this?" Claire smiled and felt more relaxed. That simple question helped break the ice. So if you want to start a conversation in a friendly way, especially with someone new, you can say, "I tried to break the ice." Now let's talk about the phrase, pull yourself together. This means to calm down and take control of your emotions. Let's say Rachel was feeling upset after she lost her phone. She was crying and feeling stressed. Her husband Thomas said gently, "Rachel, take a deep breath and pull yourself together. Let's think where you saw it last." Rachel calmed down and started thinking more clearly. A few minutes later, she remembered she had left it in the car. So when someone is upset or confused, and you want to help them calm down, you can say, pull yourself together. Next we have, speak of the devil. This phrase is used when someone you're talking about suddenly appears. For example, Mark and his wife Lily were at home talking about their neighbor Daniel. Mark said, "Daniel hasn't visited us in a while." At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Lily opened the door and said, "Speak of the devil, it's Daniel." It's a light and fun way to say, "We were just talking about you." Now let's learn, under the weather. This means someone is not feeling well. Maybe they have a cold or just feel sick. One morning, Olivia woke up feeling tired and her head was hurting. Her husband George noticed and asked, "Are you okay?" Olivia replied, "I think I'm a little under the weather today." George made her some tea and told her to rest. So when you're not feeling well, you can say, "I'm feeling under the weather." Here's another useful one. The ball is in your court. This means it's your turn to make a decision or take action. Let's say David wanted to buy a new house, but he wasn't sure. The seller gave him a good price and said, "Let me know tomorrow." David's wife Emma told him, "Now the ball is in your court." That means it was David's turn to decide what to do next. Now let's learn bite off more than you can chew. This means to take on more work than you can handle. For example, Jason agreed to help 3 neighbors fix their garden and also promised to paint his own house. After 2 days, he felt tired and couldn't keep up. His wife Sarah said, "You bit off more than you could chew." Jason agreed and said, "Next time I'll do one job at a time." This is a good phrase to describe when someone tries to do too much at once. Let's move to let the cat out of the bag. This means to reveal a secret by accident. For instance, Emma was planning a surprise birthday party for her husband. Her son Max was excited and told his father, "I can't wait for your party tomorrow." Emma looked at him and said, "Max, you let the cat out of the bag." The surprise was no longer a secret. So when someone tells a secret by mistake, we say they let the cat out of the bag. Here's a helpful phrase: get something off your chest. This means to talk about something that's been bothering you. One day, Henry was quiet at dinner. His wife Laura asked, "Is everything okay?" Henry said, "I've been worried about my job. I needed to get that off my chest." Laura listened and gave him some advice. This phrase is useful when someone wants to share a worry or a feeling that's been on their mind. Next, we have once in a blue moon. This means something happens very rarely. For example, Daniel and his wife Rebecca don't go out for dinner very often. One evening, Daniel said, "Let's go to that nice restaurant tonight." Rebecca smiled and said, "Wow, that happens once in a blue moon." They both enjoyed their special dinner. You can use this phrase when something doesn't happen often. Now let's look at burn the midnight oil. This means to stay up late working or studying. For instance, Claire was writing a long report for work. Her husband Matthew saw her still typing at midnight. He asked, "Still working?" Claire said, "Yes, I have to finish this tonight. I'm burning the midnight oil." This phrase is useful when talking about hard work done late at night. Let's also explore hit the nail on the head. This means to say something that is exactly right. For example, Thomas and Emily were discussing why their garden plants were not growing. Emily said, "Maybe the soil is too dry." Thomas replied, "You hit the nail on the head. I haven't watered them in days." This phrase is often used to praise someone who gave the correct answer or idea. Next is miss the boat. This means to miss an opportunity. Let's say Andrew wanted to buy a new laptop. There was a big discount last week, but he waited too long. When he checked again, the discount was gone. His wife Helen said, "Looks like you missed the boat." This phrase is common when someone waited too long and lost a good chance. Let's learn go back to the drawing board. This means to start again after a plan fails. For instance, Peter and Rachel were building a birdhouse. It fell apart. Rachel said, "We need to go back to the drawing board." That means they needed to make a new plan and try again. This phrase is great when a plan doesn't work and you need to restart. Now we'll talk about jump to conclusions. This means to decide something quickly without all the facts. One evening, Sarah came home and saw her husband Jack cleaning the kitchen. She said, "Did something go wrong?" Jack replied, "No, I just wanted to help." Sarah smiled and said, "Sorry, I jumped to conclusions." This phrase reminds us not to assume too fast. Let's learn sit tight. This means to wait patiently. For example, Michael and Olivia were waiting for the doctor to call. Olivia asked, "Should we call again?" Michael replied, "Let's sit tight and wait a bit longer." So when you want someone to be patient and wait, say, sit tight. Now we'll learn call it a day. This means to stop working for now. Mark was painting his fence. It was getting dark. His wife Lily said, "Let's call it a day and finish tomorrow." Mark agreed and packed up the tools. This is a simple way to say, let's stop working for now. Let's now explore throw in the towel. This means to give up or stop trying. One day, Emma was trying to bake bread. After 3 failed tries, she told her husband Daniel, "I'm throwing in the towel. Let's just buy bread from the bakery." Daniel said, "You did your best." This phrase is used when someone decides to stop because it's too hard or not working.